Just a second too. Okay, I think we're live in both places. So if you see me looking up here, it's because I'm looking at Instagram. And if I'm looking down here, it's because I'm looking at the comments on the Facebook Live. So either way, I just wanted to connect with more of you today because I had a topic I really wanted to share about, which is how to set boundaries at work. So I'm all about, self-love, setting clear boundaries, and making well-aligned career decisions. And how that actually works is by knowing what you want, right? And then setting clear boundaries and going after what you want. So I wanted to give a bit more context about what I mean when I say setting boundaries at work, because some people might hear that and think like, first off, right, like boundaries is kind of a scary word, especially as women. We're taught that like you might be perceived as mean or as a bitch for having boundaries. You might be a little nervous around someone who has strong boundaries if you have weaker boundaries, because it might like stir up some uncomfortability in you and your own boundary setting abilities. And it might feel like you don't get to do that. Like you might have a belief that when you're at work, you have to just be a selfless worker. You can't ask for things. You can't have preferences even. You're just supposed to do what you're told, and that's how you advance in a career, and that's how you get, good reviews at the end of the year. That's how you be a good worker, is by just kind of keeping your head down, doing what you're told, and never really asking for what you want or need or setting boundaries. And so this term, boundaries, in itself is super loaded in our society. And it's also so crucial if you want a career that you love, if you want to have a career that actually inspires you and gives you the lifestyle you truly desire. It takes intentional work. So to talk a bit more about how to set boundaries at work, I want to just start off by like putting it out there that yes, the word boundaries sounds scary. And if you have any questions about the term boundaries or what I mean by it, I hope you'll stick around for this live video, or if you're catching the replay, I hope you'll watch the whole thing because I'm going to give you some examples of ways you could be setting boundaries at work, as well as ways you might already be setting boundaries at work so that you can kind of ease yourself into setting boundaries, because you probably already are doing it. It's maybe just becoming more aware of it so that you then can be even more intentional with the way you set boundaries. So all right, let's dive in. And as you join me, go ahead and post a comment. Just let me know you're here. Say hi. I'm hoping to catch some of you on your lunch break. So let me know where you're tuning in from and I can greet you and we can have a conversation. That's the benefit of being on here live. So I've got Facebook Live going and Instagram Live. So let's dive into this topic. So a couple ways that you might already be setting boundaries at work are with your hours. This is a really common one because oftentimes there's a lot of negotiation around your hours. And if you're effective at setting boundaries, you're working hours that you enjoy. And I know that that sounds like a luxury, and in a lot of ways it is. So I want to own that that is a luxury to be able to set your boundaries about your hours. And if you have a job that has flexible hours in any way, you also need to be really good at setting your own boundaries, or else you're never going to get to work the hours you want to work. You might be asked to stay late, you might be asked to work weekends, and if you don't know your boundaries before you go into those conversations, you might be more likely to give in to something that you really don't want to. You might be more likely to say yes when you really wish you could say no, and then end up even more resentful at work because you didn't know what your hours boundaries were. So let me know if you ever struggle with boundaries at work around what hours you work, or if you end up getting like really bad shifts, or if you get signed up for weekend projects that you really wish you didn't have to do, and you're not sure maybe how to set a boundary on your hours at work. Because I want to give you some examples. So let's say you are at work, you're talking with your coworkers about an upcoming project, and by actually being able to set boundaries at work, you also have to know what you want and what you don't want first, right? So let's say you know that you don't want to work Saturdays because that's the one day off every week that you have with your spouse or with your mom, or you have a responsibility to take care of your niece. Like there's something that makes it where working Saturdays is really not an option for you. So if you're in a conversation at work and you maybe haven't worked out that that is a boundary for you, then when you go into those conversations about, can you work this Saturday, you're not going to be as firm, right? There's going to feel like there's negotiation room. And so if you don't go into it with a clear boundary in your mind first, you're not going to be able to advocate for yourself in the same type of way and with the same amount of power that you would if you knew, I don't work Saturdays, right? Like if that was an option for you to just say that, how would that feel? And then what would that mean you actually say in those conversations? Would you be like, oh, maybe I might be able to? Or would you be like, oh, no, like I don't work Saturdays, sorry, I can't? Would it be cut and dry, right? Because as soon as you start opening up that gate of maybe, anyone that's going to try to take advantage of it is just going to jump in on that, right? They're going to feel that your boundary isn't very firm. And they're going to say, oh, maybe you'll work Saturday, huh? Well, you really should, right? They're going to kind of push it. And then even though you knew that you don't want to work Saturdays and it doesn't work for you and you literally can't because you have other obligations, you're going to let that conversation go on, right? You're going to open a negotiation. And if you have a clear, firm boundary, you can communicate it with so much more ease. So let me check here. It looks like, oh, hey, Anne, welcome to the live. Hello, hello. So you might already be doing this, right? You might already be setting boundaries at work around your time. That is a really important one. And I just want to make sure that you know that it's totally fine to set a boundary and to have a boundary on your time and your availability for work. It's really healthy to know I work from this hour to this hour, I can work this much, this is my flexibility, I can't do that, et cetera, et cetera. So having that clarity is super important. And that's what lets you actually show up and be more firm with your boundaries and communicate them. So another way you might be doing this is topics of conversations with your coworkers. You might also not be doing this if you feel like you get dragged into conversations and you don't know how to end them. And if your coworkers happen to be people that like to complain about your clients, your students, your patients, your supervisors, your colleagues, like if that's something you don't want to engage in and then you get kind of brought into those conversations, right, because someone talks to you about one of those topics, if you don't know how to end that conversation and set a boundary that, hey, that's not something I do, you're going to feel really uncomfortable, right? That can be so awkward. If you're standing there and like someone's complaining about your supervisor that you really like and that you don't want to be talking about, if you don't know how to end that conversation or redirect it, you're going to start feeling bad, right? Because now you are part of this conversation. And think about it this way. If you weren't there to engage in that conversation, would it be happening? Possibly, maybe with someone else, but all you can control is that you're there in it. And so how do you leave conversations like that? How do you effectively say, I don't want to talk about this, right? Without starting a fight, without like shaming them. There's an art to setting boundaries, and you don't need that person's permission to set your own boundary. So if you know that you don't talk about your supervisor or your colleagues with other colleagues, right? If that's a boundary for you, if you know that, the next time someone invites you into that conversation, you know that it's not up for negotiation, right? You don't do that. And so how you respond could be anything from, oh yeah, maybe, hey, what are you having for lunch, right? Totally redirect it. Or, I don't know. Never thought about it. Anyway, right? And then change the subject. You can kind of phrase it as, you don't have to directly come out the gate and be like, how dare you? Like, I don't talk about that, right? But you can maybe phrase it as, like, I've never talked about that, or I've never considered that. Just to let them know that that's not really something you want to talk about, right? You don't spend time thinking about this. And so why would they continue to press in on the conversation to be like, oh, well, you should talk crap about this person with me? If you're expressing from the get-go, you don't think about this, you don't talk about this, it's not for you. Okay, sorry, everyone on Instagram, I just got a phone call, so I hope that we're still connected. If you're here and listening, will you comment and let me know if we're still live on Instagram? So I want to also just wrap up this topic of topics of conversation at work. Is another piece here is if you don't set that boundary, thank you, Anne, for letting me know that we're still live. Awesome. So if you don't set that boundary the first time it happens, you're going to be more likely to invite those conversations in later, right? Because somebody is going to think that you are okay with those conversations. And so the next time they want to talk crap about a coworker, they're going to come back to you. And so this is kind of a plus and a minus, right? The plus is that you're going to have another chance to set that boundary because they're probably going to come try and talk to you about it again. And the minus is that you're going to have to set that boundary, right? Or else they're going to keep coming back to talk to you about it. So you want to make sure that you're prepared for it. And so first get to know what your boundaries are, feel good about them, know why you have them. And then you want to be prepared for what you're going to say. And everyone sets boundaries differently. I've given you a couple ideas about how to redirect, how to maybe phrase a question and kind of put it back on them. And then in terms of actually following up with it, the most important thing is to know those boundaries, know that they align with you so that it's easy for you to set it. So let me check the comments here. Chaina says, good pointers, that's one of my boundaries. Yes, cut and dry for sure. Love it, awesome. Yes, boundaries at work are super important. It's how we let people know who we are, right? And what we do and don't stand for. And we can do that more effectively when we actually know ourselves and know what we want, because we get to create our workday too. We get to create our relationships. We're constantly in negotiation with our work life and our relationships. And so if we know what we want, we can more effectively advocate for it. So the last area I wanted to talk with you about in terms of setting boundaries at work is actually chasing your career goals and making your desires known. So a lot of times I get on the phone with women and we're talking about their career strategy, and they express this deep desire to have a higher paying role or to be in a more leadership position. They want to advance in their career, but they don't necessarily know exactly in what way, or they've never told anyone at work about it. Like their supervisors don't know their goals, their colleagues don't know their goals, like they themselves are a little unsure about their goals. And so one of the questions I always ask is, have you talked to your supervisor about this? And oftentimes this is met with some concerns about, well, will they let me keep my job, right? Like, will they know that I'm pursuing new opportunity, and will that reflect back on me negatively? So in that scenario, chances are they're either going to be like, yay, let's give you some more responsibility. And then you need to be prepared for what that conversation looks like, right? Don't just get another job piled on without getting, rewarded for it, compensated for it. Or they're going to just know it and either be supportive, right, and give you that space to grow, or not. And that gives you so much more information, right? If there's not room for you to grow there, if you don't have a supportive supervisor, you need to know that. So then you can make effective plans to reach your goals. Whether that's that you start looking outside the organization, whether it's that you pick up a side job to flex that new skill, whether it's that you start your own business. You need to know what your career goals and desires are so that you can start asking for them, right? If you don't know what they are, then it's really hard to communicate about it. And here's how this relates back to setting boundaries. If you know that your goal is to grow in this direction, right, in your career, and then you're in a conversation at work, let's say your annual review, and they're talking to you about this way, right? Like they're like, oh, well, we actually want you to work on these projects. You need to know that boundary, right? You need to know that that's not in line with your goals. And how great would it have been if you had communicated that before you now are in this like high pressure, this is what we want you to do conversation. So just another benefit to communicating your goals. But also in that moment when you're now negotiating about what's next for you at this company, you can share with them, well, actually, I was thinking this. Well, that doesn't actually fit with where I'm trying to go with that. And if they still want to give you that project, okay, at least they know, right? And you can communicate back and forth on, I think I could do this better if I had this support. Or, I'm really okay with doing this part of it, but I don't really want to do that part of it. Can we work together to manage this workload? Remember, your manager is there to literally manage the workload, right? So your job is to communicate what you do and don't want, and then work with them and negotiate to find a good fit for you and a good balance. But they can't manage your workflow effectively if they don't know what you want, right? And you can't advocate for yourself effectively if you don't know what you want. So setting boundaries at work is crucial to you actually enjoying your job, to you having fun at work, and to not being roped into conversations that you hate. Like, I'm just gonna call it like it is. Some of those conversations can be really uncomfortable if a colleague is trying to just be really negative and down, and you don't want to be a part of that. So how do you start setting boundaries? Well, you get clear on what you want and where you want to go, right? Because it all is connected, so that you can more easily and more powerfully and more clearly advocate for yourself in any work negotiation. And start being more clear and upfront, and start asking for the support you need to get where you want to go. It's amazing. The more you start putting your needs out there, the more they'll get met. Like, that sounds really simple, right? It's very simple, but it's not easy, because it does take getting to know yourself, finding strength, reclaiming your power, moving forward, and actually courageously communicating about what you want and staying consistent with it, staying accountable to it, and accountable to your future. So if you're interested in moving forward in your career, if you want to advance your career, if you've been feeling burnt out, down, like if you've lost your passion for your work, if you're not sure what your next step is or should be, what would actually make you happy and excited again about work? How would you confidently enjoy your career and life again? If that question sounds hard for you to answer, if it frustrates you when someone says, "What are you doing next?" Or "Do you like your job?" If you're nervous to answer that question, we should talk. I offer free career strategy sessions. They're 30 minutes. It's me and you one-on-one. You get my full undivided attention, and we can get you started finding clarity on what you really want. We'll clarify where you're at now and what might be keeping you there, so that you can actually work through it and reach your goals, because enjoying your career is really important to enjoying your life. We spend 40 plus hours a week on our work. And if you've got a commute, you've got those hours you're spent thinking about going to work and coming from work. If you're stressed out about work and unhappy with it, you're probably spending even more time venting about work afterwards and stressing about your upcoming projects. So work can take up a lot of our life. So if you're in alignment with it, if you enjoy it, if you can see a future in it, you're going to enjoy it more, right? It's going to be more fun. And when you actually enjoy what you're doing and you're passionate about it, you're also more likely to do better work, right? Because you want to spend extra time on it. You want to sign up for that extra new project. You actually want to engage with it and become an expert in your field, because you can see how it aligns with your long-term plan. So if you have a long-term plan and you're not quite meeting it, if you don't have a long-term plan but you want one, and if you're ready to advance your career, I hope you'll take advantage of my free career strategy sessions and book yours now. You can go to my website, genesisrose.com/book-a-session, and I've put it over here in the Facebook Live comments. So if you're watching on Facebook, the link is there already. Go ahead and click it and book your time. If you're watching on Instagram, I'm going to drop it in the comments probably after this video. I've never actually done Instagram Live before, so fingers crossed that this all works and I can actually comment on it for you so you can catch it afterwards. But either way, if you are ready to advance your career and you want to do it with clarity, courage, and confidence, we should talk. So book your session, and I can't wait to talk to you one-on-one about your goals and how you can get there. All right, bye everyone. I hope this was helpful. Leave any questions in the comments so I can come back and respond to them. Bye.